Sir Gangaram Hospital. And she has also been part of various clinical trials, phase 3 with ranibizumab, original molecule, as well as the this biosimilar. So who better than her to moderate today's session? So with this, I'd just like to hand over the session to Dr. Tinku ma'am to introduce the speakers and take the session forward. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. And it's my absolute pleasure to be here and moderating this session. So I welcome everyone to this Bare Eyesight webinar. And I thank everyone for having spared time to be with us this evening. So today we'll be focusing on something that, is a field that is evolving very rapidly. Even as we speak, it's evolving. And we'll be focusing on how to optimize anti-VEGF therapy, particularly the role of aflibercept in neovascular AMD and in PCV. Now, we as retina specialists, whenever we treat our patients, we have two things which are foremost in our mind. One is to give the best possible vision to the patient, and second is to reduce the treatment burden of the patient and at the same time control the disease. So we have two very excellent speakers, vitreoretina specialists, Dr. Ritika Gaur and Dr. Ruheen Siddiqui, who will share the evidence from various studies and also give their own clinical perspectives on this. And we are looking forward to your talks. We also have a few discussants who will be joining us a bit later. What I would like is that I would like all the participants to please make it interactive. It's a good idea. We would love to hear your perspectives, any comments, any questions that you may have. You're welcome to post them in the chat box, and we'll be taking them up at the end of the talks. So with that, I now invite Dr. Ritika Gaur for her talk, and she'll be speaking on aflibercept treat and extend regimen in neovascular AMD, something that we all are now switching over to. Dr. Ritika Gaur is a very expert vitreoretina surgeon. She works at, she's a consultant in the vitreoretina services and also the Uvia services at the Manav Eye Hospital, Ghaziabad. She's an alumnus of the Shankar Nethralaya, Chennai. And looking forward to your talk, Dr. Ritika, and I invite you to share your slides.
Thank you, ma'am, for this kind introduction. I would just like to share my screen now. One second. Is the presentation visible?
Yes, yeah, it is.
So, good evening, everybody. I would like to very briefly touch upon aflibercept, the treat and extend approach, its long-lasting benefits, and reduced treatment frequency in neovascular age-related macular degeneration. One second, sorry for the, yeah. So even after so much research and the field which is very much evolving, the current unmet need in the treatment of NAMD patient is the number of injections. It is the quantity of injections. There is an absolute need to reduce these number of injections in order to reduce the treatment burden. So as much as 72% of the respondents to the 2022 EURETINA Clinical Trends Survey agreed that the quantity of injections is the largest unmet need in the current anti-VEGF scenario. So the aflibercept, there is always a variation between VEGF suppression between individuals. There is the mean duration of suppression is 71 plus minus 18 days. The duration of VEGF-A suppression with aflibercept varies up to 16 weeks. So this shows us that there is an absolute need for treatment individualization. The treat and extend regimen in clinical practice is as follows. We initially treat the patient with one injection per month for 3 months, 3 consecutive months, and then the treatment interval is extended to 2 months. So basically, we treat the patient until the disease is stable, there is no fluid. Then the patient receives an injection at every visit. This is important that they receive injection at every visit with no monitoring between visits. And the time between the treatments is then gradually extended until the fluid recurs or visual acuity declines. This interval is slowly extended. However, when there is recurrence of fluid or visual acuity declines, then we decrease the interval to the previous stable interval. Maintaining this, it is shown that this interval will minimize treatment burden and fluid fluctuation. So, coming to the current anti-VEGFs and their durability, there are various studies that were taken under ranibizumab treat and extend approach. However, it was shown that it requires high burden of treatment to maintain vision gains through the year 2. Also, a very few percentage, less than probably 40% of the patients were able to extend it beyond 12 weeks. So with ranibizumab, it was the treatment burden remained the same. The number of injections remained almost high. In Hawk and Harrier study, only 39 to 45% of patients were maintained on a 12-weekly dosing with 6 mg brolucizumab in the year 2. Mean number of injections over 2 years with brolucizumab 6 mg were 10. However, with aflibercept were just 11.7. So despite the option to extend the interval to 12 weeks in the brolucizumab arm, the patient received only 1.2 fewer injections than those receiving aflibercept, where in the aflibercept arm, the dosing was fixed to a 8-weekly dosing. Also, it is important to note that brolucizumab, it has a relatively higher molar concentration. So because of the small molecular weight, that means it has a shorter intraocular half-life, and thus it gets clear from the eye very quickly. In TENAYA and Lucerne, we saw that up to 25.8% of the patients receiving faricimab 6 mg, they could not be extended beyond the 8-weekly mark. Patients receiving faricimab 6 mg 8-weekly were likely to have an increased injection burden versus those receiving aflibercept on a 8-weekly fixed dosing, because in the faricimab arm, there was initially, we had to give 4 doses as a part of the initiation treatment. So if we compare the durability of aflibercept, the study design in TENAYA and Lucerne was such that the direct comparison between the two groups weren't possible, because in the faricimab arm, we were required to give 4 doses as the initiation treatment, and in aflibercept, there were only 3 doses. Also, 8-weekly intervals were not permitted with the aflibercept 2 mg. The extension of up to 16 weekly depended upon the disease activity assessment at weeks 20 and 24, and there was no option to readjust treatment intervals after week 24 in year 1. Patient treated according to a PTI regimen in year 2. Coming to aflibercept, the RCTs in aflibercept, ALTAIR was a randomized controlled trial in which 3 doses were given at 4 weekly, then 1 dose was given at 16 weeks, and then there were 2 weekly, patients were adjusted on a 2 weekly interval and a 4 weekly interval. There was a 2 weekly, we could increase with 2 weeks and decrease with 2 weeks, and in another arm, we could increase with 4 weeks or decrease with 4 weeks depending upon the disease activity. With disease activity, there were few criteria that were chosen, like we could extend the interval if there was no fluid present, or there was no loss of more than 5 letters, there was no increase in the CRT of more than 100 microns, there was no new neovascularization or no new hemorrhage. We could maintain the residual, but we could maintain the same interval if there was residual but a decreased fluid. However, We could also shorten it by 2 weeks or 4 weeks, depending upon which arm. If there was any new fluid present, or if there was any new neovascularization, or if there was any new macular hemorrhage. ALTAIR was a study where it allowed patients to be maintained on their current injection interval in presence of residual but decreased fluid. ALTAIR patients who were in the 2-weekly arm, there was increase in the visual acuity by 7.6 letters with 10.4 injections. And in 4-weekly arm, the ETDRS letters increased by 6.1, and again the injections were 10.4. Almost 41.5% of the patient could be maintained on 16-weekly interval up to the final visit, that is week 96. And in the 4-weekly arm, 46.3% of the patients could be maintained at Q16 intervals. By week 96, 56.9% to 60.2%, almost more than 50% of the patients were maintained at injection intervals of 12 weeks and beyond. In the same study, up to 96.2% of the patients who were maintained at 16 dosing interval, they maintained this 16 dosing interval by the end of week 96. That is by the end of the second year. The ALTAIR study also showed that the visual gains achieved in year 1 were maintained till week 96 with fewer than 4 injections in year 2 in both the treatment arm groups. So this was the RCT which was done on multi-center randomized trial. But can we really have these outcomes in clinical practice? So there were a few studies that were done and real world evidence that was taken. So how long can we continue this 16-weekly or 12-weekly dosing? So they suggested an exit criteria. The 35% in Jaggi et al. Said in 35% of the patients, if they reach more than 3 consecutive 16-weekly intervals, we can exit. We can not give them injections. However, we can keep them on 12-weekly control visit so that we can identify the potential recurrence when treatment and when the treatment can be resumed. Similarly, in a study by Morocco et al., vision improved from baseline to year 2 with aflibercept treat and extend, with up to 61% of patients achieving dosing intervals of 3 months. The mean number of injections in this study over year 1 was 7.4, and a total over year 2 were 13. Again, in this study by Tapaya et al., 67% of the patients treated with a rapid extension protocol. In this rapid extension protocol, we directly jump to 8-weekly interval. They achieved dosing intervals of 3 months after 2 years of proactive treat and extend with aflibercept, with mean number of injections in year 2 only 11.6. So this was another study, a 2-year real-world results for aflibercept using treat and extend regimen in neovascular age-related macular degeneration and in polypoidal choroidal vasculopathy. In this study, a total of 43 patients were enrolled, 24 of whom were diagnosed with neovascular AMD and 19 with PCV. The best corrected visual acuity in logMAR improved from 0.75 plus minus 0.41 to 0.60 plus minus 41 at 3 months after treatment initiation, and further improved to 0.66 plus minus 0.46 at 24 months. The number of injections within 2-year treatment course was 10.9 plus minus 3.65. At 24 months of this treat and extend regimen, the treatment interval was extended to more than 16 weeks in 60.5% of all cases to 78.9% of all the PCV cases. Real-world evidence also supports this effectiveness and this durability of aflibercept 2mg with a proactive treat and extend regimen. There are various studies which showed that more than 16 weekly and more than 12 weekly intervals can be achieved in more than 50% of the patients. So to end and to see that aflibercept 2 mg has really set the bar high in terms of outcomes, in terms of visual acuity, and in terms of also decreasing the treatment burden. As supported by a wealth of data, aflibercept 2 mg has shown to deliver amongst all these anti-VEGFs. Aflibercept very nicely binds to the most diverse range of VEGF R1 ligands, which are the key drivers of the retinal disease. With this, we have seen, and over years, we have seen that there are improved long-term outcomes if we follow this regular and proactive treatment. Aflibercept Treat and Extend offers the flexibility to achieve and maintain vision gains with interval of from 4 weekly to 16 weekly while still tolerating some residual fluid, and this reduces the treatment burden. I would now like to share one case, and then we can probably start the discussion. Just give me one second. Yeah. So we had a patient with a 68-year-old male who was a retired government employee. He came to us with blurring of vision in the left eye since 4 months. The best corrected visual acuity in the right eye was 6.6, and left eye was already gone with counting fingers close to face. So this is his OCT in January of 2021. Right eye is absolutely okay with compact fovea. There are a few drusenoid changes in the right eye. However, left eye, the CNVM was already scarred with degenerative spaces. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we gave 2 injections 4 weekly apart. However, there was not much we could do for him in this eye, and we told him about regular screening for his right eye. So then he came to us again in June of 2021, and we saw fluid in the right eye. PCV also decreased from 6.6 to 6.12. We can see mild fluid which has come. So we gave him 3 loading doses 4 weeks apart. After the first dose, the fluid had completely dried up, but we followed the loading dose. We again gave injection after I completely jumped and came to the rapid treatment. After 4 months, we again gave injection in November of 2021, even when the disease activity was stable and patient was 6.6. I again gave after 16 weeks in the April of 2022. So till April of 2022, I gave him 5 injections, 3 of which were loading doses and 2 of which were 16 weeks apart. Patient was happy, 6.6, no problem at all. Then I put him on 12 weekly screening just to see because he was one-eyed, but never gave him an injection in the year 2022. September, January 2023, no injection, March 2023, no injection. So this patient safely matched the exit criteria, so I didn't give him injection, although I put him on regular screening. Then came April 2024 and the fluid reoccurred. There was a reactivation there. And we all know that there is 41% chances of reactivation in year 1, which sharply increases to 79% in up till year 5. So I gave another injection in the right eye of 2024 and put him on regular screening, first monthly, and then I increased the time interval to 12 weekly. Patient was absolutely stable, maintaining his vision. exit criteria again met. But patient came again in 2026. After 1 year, after giving just one injection, the fluid reoccurred in 2026, and I gave the injection again, and thankfully till now he's doing fine. So the real world scenario, as far as in my clinical practice, I try to do a treat and extend in the first year of disease activity. Then I put the patient on Prorineta and always educate the patient on reactivation and give him Amsler chart. So this is what I do with my CNVM patients in clinical practice. I'll just.
Yeah.
I'll,
Thank you, Dr. Ritika. That was an excellent talk, and you gave us some very pertinent evidence from various studies as well as real world data. And then you summed it up beautifully with that case. So my question to you is that is the treat and extend now is the way to go? Because most of us in India, we were earlier following the PRN regime. But now I think most of us have. So that was a very reactive way of managing these patients. When the patient came back with fluid, you reacted and then you treated the patient. As opposed to this is a very proactive manner of treating patients where you don't wait for the fluid to come, but you keep on treating the patient regardless whether there's fluid or not, and then you keep on increasing the treatment interval. What are the challenges that you face in, advising this treat and extend to patients?
ma'am, convincing the patient is
Yeah.
the first big task, because after the first injection, they have maximum response. And if the disease is stable, their vision is okay, they do not actually agree for second dose or the doses ahead. So what I try to do is in the very first consultation, I try to tell them that you may require, we will follow 3 loading doses and we might follow up till 5, which is the treatment. This treatment you have to go through if you want to avoid reactivation and if you want that the disease completely dries up. So I educate them in the very first meeting. So
True.
they get this mindset that when they go, they have to get their eyes injected. So they
Right.
are prepared.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it. We should be priming the patients in the first visit itself. And the loading dose should be given in all patients. So earlier again, how practices have changed is that earlier when we were using aflibercept or these higher molecules, we were just going in straight away with PRN. But now various studies have shown that the loading dose is absolutely essential to maintaining a drier retina in the long term. So 3 loading doses and then treat and extend is the way to go. And there's a question in the chat box that how do you counsel newly diagnosed patients regarding the need for multiple injections? I think you need to tell them that this neovascular AMD is something like diabetes or hypertension, which is going to be there with you, throughout your life. It is not a disease that is going to vanish with one injection. So it is a chronic disease, and the treatment also has to be long drawn. Sometimes the follow-up maybe have to be for his entire life. So you have to tell the patient in the beginning itself. And now that earlier patients, when they heard about the injection, they would expect miracles to happen with one injection. But now I think even patients are more aware. They've been reading up. There's so much more information now available to them. And so patients are also now more amenable when we tell them that multiple injections would be needed, as opposed to a few years ago.
What I learned from my mentor is I counsel them that way, that I tell them this is a lifetime of a disease and we're
Right.
just trying to put speed breakers and we're trying that it extends beyond your lifespan. So the disease will gonna go on and you might have a decrease in visual acuity little bit even after the fluid dries up. We're just trying to put speed breakers to it. So
Right.
yeah, they kind of understand it.
I know. What is your preference now for patients, or are there any specific subset of patients that you would choose for aflibercept as regards the previous generation anti-VEGFs, or is aflibercept now your go-to injection?
My first line therapy in CNVM cases and PCV cases has always been aflibercept, because it has stood the test of time. It has been there and it has shown wonderful results. if they're doing work and if patient is happy and results are good, then why to shift is my thing.
True.
So
Okay,
it's
so
always been
yeah,
aflibercept.
that is true. Especially in more aggressive diseases, in PCV, definitely. In AMDs with a lot of subretinal fluid, lot of intraretinal fluid, SHREM, large PEDs, I think a stronger molecule like aflibercept really helps in the long run. And the most beautiful part is that we can extend the treatment intervals to 12 weeks and also to 16 weeks in quite a few of the patients. So that is a very, very, important thing that aflibercept gives us. So, Dr. Ritika, any signs on OCT or clinically that would, keep you from, extending the patient forward? Like you've given 3 injections. And what are the biomarkers that you would be looking at, or what are the clinical picture that you would be looking at that would tell you that this patient requires now more frequent injections? You cannot extend this patient, after 3 injections. He would still require 4 weekly injection. What do you look at? What do you look for at in the OCT or clinically?
Ma'am,
That tells.
the basically the type of PD and the choroidal architecture I look at. There are choroidal lacunae, and if there are choroidal lacunae, that means you want to treat the patient more aggressively. If there are PEDs that are still existing, then also I inject the patient more aggressively.
Mhm. Also, any new fluid that is coming in, I think that.
That
What
fluid,
about,
macular
yeah,
hemorrhage on IO,
yeah,
definitely.
yes, any new hemorrhage, that is a very, very important telltale sign that this lesion is still active and
Right,
we need to be a bit more aggressive with this lesion.
right.
Also, we have another question in the chat box. Have you identified any specific patient profile where you would prefer Eylea over Vabysmo or vice versa? And also, what drives that preference? So, I'll take that question. See, Eylea has been our go-to injection over the past so many years. And also now with the price coming down, we have to look at the cost and the benefit ratio as well. So now that the cost has come down and we are getting a very good extension with this molecule, I think Eylea is my go-to for all patients of AMD. With Vabysmo, the response is there. Vabysmo is also a very good molecule, but it's a very slow response. So sometimes you don't know whether the patient has responded or you need to still wait a bit more and the response will come. Also, the recommended loading dose is again 4 injections that was there in the Tenaya and the Lucerne study. So, Vabysmo is still new. It's a slower acting molecule. It does work, but the response is not that fast. And sometimes the response is so long drawn that even the patients and the doctors become a little impatient. So, I would still prefer to use Eylea over Vabysmo. Yeah. Any other question?
After so many injections, patients, they kind of know when the fluid dries up and their visual acuity suddenly improves. So they're happy. The happiness quotient is there with aflibercept, which is not so much with Vabysmo.
Right, right. And now that we have started using more of Vabysmo, we'll come to know the long-term results. But then, in my experience, I've seen that it's a little slower the response. Also, I feel Vabysmo is a bit thicker solution.
Definitely.
Yeah, it is thicker. Sometimes it may be a little difficult to push it, but otherwise it also works. Um, So, Dr. Ritika, if you see your approach over the years, how do you think our approach as retina surgeons has changed over the years? When you see your practice in managing neovascular AMD, what were you doing before and that you're doing? What is the new thing that you're now doing in 2026 that you were not doing before?
uh, Treating neovascular AMD more aggressively. Before, we were not very tuned to reactivation of the lesion. We never thought about reactivation, but now when I see my lesions getting reactivated even after 5 years or 3 years, so now I've come to more proactively treating and giving them injections up till 5 injections. And previously, as you said, we were only treating the initial disease and were never worried about the reactivation.
Right. And now I think we've also gotten to look at the OCT more closely. The OCT gives us a lot of clues regarding the activity in the patient. It's not just the visual acuity that we should go by. It is also looking very closely at the OCT. So sometimes you may feel that the patient is completely dry and, patient is doing very well. But if you see a PED, which is increasing in height in the subsequent visits, that's a very, very small telltale sign that there's still activity going on under that. A very subtle increase in size of the PED, or also a subretinal cleft, in the choroidal layer, something like that. These are very subtle signs, or sudden increase in hyperreflective dots, or Shrem coming in, which was not there before. A lot of subretinal hyperreflective material increasing. So these are all again biomarkers that we were not looking at so closely in previous years. And again, also now we've shifted to longer acting molecules. Earlier we were with ranibizumab, bevacizumab, which did not give us this kind of extension that we are now getting with aflibercept. That is a 16 weeks extension. Also, another thing that we need to tell our patients, patients are frustrated and they say that uh, we're going to be getting so many injections all our life. So you have to tell them that the burden of injections is going to come down drastically in the coming years. So as you showed in your studies also, so almost 50% injections in the second year, and then maybe in the third year, maybe one or two injections, and then the patient can be even off those injections. So we have to tell them that the frequency of the injections is going to go down as the years progress. So there are no more questions here. Anything else that you'd like to add, Dr. Ritika? Is Dr. Aditi also there with us? Dr.
Yes,
Aditi,
ma'am.
Dr. Aditi, would you like to add? And Dr. Sharika and Shreya, are they also there? Dr. Aditi, any insights or any perspectives that you would like to share?
Actually, I had a question.
Mhm.
So, there are some patients who come back, say, after we've given them the loading dose and maybe a couple of injections post that. But some patients come with scarring. And then post scarring, obviously, the vision drops. And then sometimes, say, after a couple of months, this patient will again develop some fluid. So then it becomes very difficult for you to convince the patient to get more injections. So how do you go about it in such a situation?
So the scarring would happen only if the patient did not keep up his follow-up visits,
Yes,
if he
yes.
was lost to follow-up. So you have to explain to the patient that follow-up is extremely important, otherwise it will lead to a bad visual outcome. And once scarring has developed, you've lost that visual acuity as it is. So you have to explain that to the patient. There's nothing, once scarring and fibrosis have occurred, there's really not much that you can do. So you have to emphasize to the patient the importance of close follow-ups and, the repeated injections at the given time that you've called them. So for treat and extend, it's very important that you have very compliant patients, because if the patient is not compliant and is not coming for that date that you've given him for the injection, then you're going to be losing that visual acuity. So that has to be emphasized to the patient in the beginning itself. So it's always a good idea to show them the OCT, see the OCT with the patient, show them a normal retinal scan, show them where the fluid is, show them how the scar would occur. And I think then that would drill that into the patient's mind. But yeah, once fibrosis has occurred, then not much that you
Yes,
can.
actually, I would say 60% of the patients they don't come on time. So
True.
generally, I have so many patients who take the loading doses and then they'll just disappear,
Right.
say for 6 to 8 months, and then they come back with scarring. So it gets very difficult that way.
Yeah, I know. That is a big challenge we face here in India, especially patients who live in remote towns and villages. So it does become a challenge for them also, to get a caregiver who would get them. But if you explain it to them in the beginning itself that, they're going to be losing their vision if they don't, it's just counseling, basically. That's all that we can do at our end. Counsel them very well.
That first visit of the patient of treatment naive NMD, that first consultation is very important, I feel.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
first counseling to put it in their brain.
True. So I think now we'll move on to our second talk. And the second talk is by Dr. Ruheen Siddiqui. Just a minute. Dr. Ruheen, any inputs that you would like to give regarding neovascular AMD and treatment paradigms?
Good evening,
Any
ma'am.
perspectives you want to share?
Yes, ma'am. As very rightly said by Dr. Ritika, that the first interaction with the patient of NAMD, that first very meeting should be very appropriate, and that we should spend more time in explaining the patient that regular follow-ups will be needed, and she may need injections, and regular follow-up should be done. Basically, we can show the patients the comparative photos, OCT photos and fundus photos, and we can show the patient testimonials also of our happy patients also, so that they can get motivated for further injections. So that is the go through.
Yeah, thank you. So now we'll move on to Dr. Ruheen Siddiqui's talk. So Dr. Ruheen is an alumnus of the Regional Institute of Ophthalmology at Sitapur, and then she went on to do a Vitreoretina Fellowship at the C.L. Gupta Eye Institute at Moradabad. And presently, she is a consultant in the Vitreoretina services in the same institute. So Dr. Ruheen will be talking to us about the use of aflibercept in PCV. So Dr. Ruheen, please share your screen.
Are my slides visible?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Ruheen Siddiqui, and today I'll be talking about the evolving role of aflibercept in PCV and the APVRS insights and comparisons with other anti-VEGF agents. So, aflibercept monotherapy achieves clinically meaningful visual outcomes in patients with subtypes of neovascular AMD such as PCV. So, according to the APVRS guidelines, update in 2025, whenever we make a diagnosis of the PCV, our initial treatment should be in the form of our loading doses. And it all depends on the OCT major criteria, that is sub-RP ring-like lesions and RP elevations seen on fast OCT, and also sharp peaked PEDs. So the treatment paradigms can be in the form of anti-VEGF monotherapy or a combination with anti-VEGF and PDT. So basically, anti-VEGF monotherapy is preferred due to the non-availability of the dye for PDT in India, and it further enhances our monitoring of the treatment response with OCT or plus minus ICGA. OCT in the regular follow-ups of the patient is regularly done, and ICGA can also be done. So we check for complete regression or stabilized subretinal fluid, and then we can gradually extend our intervals of the treatment as per treat and extend regimen. If the patient has persistent or recurrence of disease activity, then we can shorten the intervals with treat and extend regimen, or we can go for a combination treatment of anti-VEGF with PDT, or we can switch to another anti-VEGF agent. If after the confirmation of the PCV diagnosis with multiple imaging modalities, if the patient comes with a large submacular hemorrhage, then he or she can be planned for pneumatic displacement with or without vitrectomy and with or without TPA injection. If the patient has active extrafoveal polypoidal lesions, then thermal laser ablation can also be tried. So in the 2025 APVRS guidelines, monotherapy with anti-VEGF treatment is effective in many cases of PCV, and it can be used initially as monotherapy. Till date, there are no data exploring whether faricimab or brolucizumab monotherapy are non-inferior to the combination therapy in patients with PCV. So there are multitude of injections available these days, like aflibercept, brolucizumab, ranibizumab, faricimab, and So I'll be discussing few trials, which randomized controlled trials, which were done with aflibercept for PCV, namely View 2 Planet trials. So in 2016, the Everest 2 trial was done, which compared ranibizumab with ranibizumab and PDT. So in cases of patients who underwent only monotherapy with ranibizumab, less vision gain was achieved. In 2014 till 2017, Planet trial was done, which compared Eylea monotherapy versus Eylea with PDT. Overall, they noted that there were similar visual acuity gains in both these groups. In 2018, Altair trial was done, which demonstrated the safety and the efficacy of 2 mg aflibercept as treat and extend in neovascular AMD also, and less patients were there of PCV in Altair trial, and they extended the trial to week 96. In 2020, Maruko et al. Trial was done, and it assessed the efficacy of monotherapy of aflibercept in neovascular AMD and PCV. So I'll be discussing these trials in a bit detail. So Planet trial was done. It took 318 patients, and it was a prospective multi-center kind of a trial. And all these 318 patients were given 3 initial monthly doses of aflibercept. And then they were randomized at week 12. At the first group had, it took only aflibercept monotherapy as 8 weekly trial, 8 weekly injection, and the week 2 had aflibercept 4 weekly with PDT. So their primary endpoint was at 52 weeks. In both these groups, they explained about the change in best corrected visual acuity from the baseline and also the safety outcomes. So in the aflibercept treat and extend or rescue treatment, these both groups were checked at 96 weeks as a study endpoint. So in the aflibercept monotherapy, which is the dark blue one, it had more visual acuity gains in as the ETDRS letters as compared to patients who had aflibercept monotherapy with rescue PDT. So the patients with extended intervals in year 2, they maintained vision gains with a reduced treatment burden. In aflibercept monotherapy, patients had 11.1 visual acuity letter gain as compared to the aflibercept with PDT. And the mean number of injections was lesser in the group of aflibercept monotherapy, which was 4.1 injections from week 52 to week 96. And in second year, till 96 weeks, aflibercept monotherapy, again, it showed that it required less number of injections as compared to the combination therapy with rescue PDT, which needed mean number of injections as 4.2. In Altair trial also, this was done in 2018, and 154 patients of non-PCV group were included, and 90 patients of PCV group were included. So overall, these both groups showed that lesser number of injections were needed at year 2 in both the groups, in PCV subgroup also and in the non-PCV subgroup also. And similar proportions of patients with or without PCV, they were extended to intervals of more than equal to 8 weeks by week 96 with aflibercept 2 mg and 2 mg treat and extend. So the mean last treatment interval of the patients who had 2-week adjustment of the aflibercept injection, they lasted for 12.1 weeks. And for patients who had 4 weekly adjustment, it was about till 12.7 weeks. So overall, in the Maruko trial et al., it also reported similar outcomes with aflibercept 2 mg treat and extend through 2 years, regardless of neovascular AMD, whether it was wet AMD or it was PCV. It had almost the same visual outcome results. So the real world patients with PCV can achieve vision gains and when compared to those in randomized control trials. It was shown by Hosokawa and et al. Trial, which was run in 2017. It also showed that at the 12-week intervals at year 1 was around 60%. And in Morisen, Hosokawa et al., done in 2018, it was a 2-year study. It also explained that 4 weekly intervals of the patient at year 2 were maintained by around 47.3% of the patients. Complete polyp regression have also been observed across the real-world case series with aflibercept in PCV. So, eyes with complete polyp regression across the different studies showed that the variability in the polyp regression was due to the differences in the polyp regression assessment criteria across different studies. So, it was maximum in the Japanese case series done in 2014 and 2015. At 6 month treatment duration, the study explained that the patients had complete polyp regression after giving aflibercept monotherapy. So more than 50% of the patients were assigned to faricimab 20 weekly trial, where dosing intervals were at 44 to 48 weeks. So maximum number of patients achieved the 8 weekly injection-free period at week 20, 24, 28 also, and at 44 and 48 weeks also. So basically this table, it differentiates the designs and the effectivity of aflibercept and faricimab. For faricimab, Salvine trial was done. It was a single arm trial. It didn't had any control arm. So it showed that 4 monthly loading doses, 4 loading doses were described by this trial for faricimab, while for aflibercept trial, which was done, Planet trial was done for aflibercept, it explained that 3 monthly doses are required for aflibercept. And in Planet trial, the primary endpoint was that it was aflibercept monotherapy was not inferior as compared to aflibercept with BDT when they compared the best corrected visual acuity change at week 52. Hara et al. The trial was run to compare the aflibercept versus faricimab for PCV patients after 3 loading doses. So it explained that there were significantly better visual outcomes as for aflibercept as compared to PCV. The best corrected visual acuity significantly improved after 3 monthly injections of aflibercept after the first treatment, but there was no significant improvement as observed in the faricimab group. Numerically greater with aflibercept in the proportion of eyes with residual exudative change and eyes with complete resolution of polypoidal lesions was observed in Hara et al.'s trial as compared to the faricimab group. So this Hara et al. Trial, it also concluded that both aflibercept and faricimab treatments, they are effective in reducing the exudation and also the retinal thickness. However, when compared with faricimab, aflibercept was more likely to eliminate the exudative changes and also improve the visual acuity after loading doses as compared to faricimab loading doses. So I'll be describing a few cases which are seen in the OPD. Some are of wet AMD and some are of PCV. So this was the first patient, who was a 58-year-old female. She presented in February 2024 with a large subretinal hyperreflective material and a NSD and subretinal fluid spaces in with a visual acuity of 2400. So at this visit, the patient was advised Pegenax brolucizumab injection. So the fluid dried very drastically when in March 2024 after the first injection, and the visual acuity also improved from 2400 to 2125. So the patient was advised second injection of Pegenax, and after that the patient was lost to follow-up. So this patient from March, she came on in September 2024 with recurrence of the fluid, and at this visit aflibercept injection was given, and which dried up the fluid, and the visual acuity also improved from 2200 to 2000 in October 2024. So when this patient was followed from October 2024 till 25, she didn't had fluid in her subsequent OCT scans. In October 2025, her visual acuity reduced to 20/400, and she again presented with recurrence. So she was again advised aflibercept injection. So her visual acuity improved to 20/320 in December 2025. So she was again advised aflibercept, and she was followed up till March 2026. Her best corrected visual acuity was 2200. She had very little IRF spaces and a large chunk of SHREM, and she was advised Eylea injection. Her last OCT was done in 2026 June, and her visual acuity was stable. It was 2000. My second case will be there was a 54-year-old male patient who presented with blurred vision since 1 month, and the right eye had the uncorrected visual acuity was 2200, and the best corrected was 66. And in the left eye, the uncorrected visual acuity was 2125 with the best corrected visual acuity of 2080. So right eye had drusense basically only, and the left eye had drusense along with the CNVM. So this was the OCT, and there was increased central subfield thickness, and there were IRF spaces also, and there was subretinal fluid also. And this yellow asterisk shows the subretinal hyperreflective material, and there was a fibrovascular PED also. So the patient was advised left eye cataract surgery with intravitreal aflibercept 2 mg, and the patient was advised for 3 loading doses. So after the first injection, her best corrected visual acuity improved from 2080 to 2060. This was at 4 weeks. And after that, second loading dose was given, and her visual acuity improved to 20/40 with gradual reduction of the subretinal hyperreflective material and the reduction of the IRF spaces also. So at 4 weekly interval, her third loading dose was given. Her vision was 20/40, similar as compared to the last visit. At this visit, brolucizumab was advised to her, and as we can see that there was drastic improvement in the subretinal hyperreflective material that almost dried up, and the best corrected visual acuity improved to 20/30. So our observations were that there was complete resolution of PD, SRF, and the IRF after the first intravitreal injection, and there was almost complete disappearance of SHREM with a single brolucizumab injection, as we can see from this OCT scan to this. So the case-based learning points were what the literature showed, that VIEW and the CAT trials showed that slow PD resolution was there, unlike of IRF and SRF to anti-VEGF. And in our case, there was complete resolution of IRF, SRF along with the fibrovascular PD complex. And PD height reduction is most dramatic after the first injection, as shown in the VIEW and the CAT trials. And the visual acuity gain is directly linked to the resolution of IRF and SRF, and not basically the resolution of the PED. That similarly happened in our patient also. So in our patient, SHREM markedly resolved after the third aflibercept injection. The size of the SHREM reduced, and it gradually resolved with brolucizumab injection. So in case 3, there was a patient who was a 70-year-old male patient who had diabetes also, and in right eye, the patient presented with the best corrected visual acuity of 20/100. He was a pseudophakic patient, and in the right eye, the patient had submacular hemorrhage, and in left eye was fundus finding was within normal limits, and the best corrected visual acuity was 20/20. So in the OCT finding, the patient had increased central subfoveal thickness, and there was a large submacular hemorrhage with backshadowing, and there was a hemorrhagic PD also. So on this visit, the patient was advised 3 loading doses of intravitreal aflibercept 2 mg. So after the first injection at 4 weeks, the visual acuity improved to 20/60, and at next injection was advised after 4 weekly interval. The visual acuity improved from 2060 to 2040, and as we can see, the PD height also reduced, and the IRF spaces have also reduced. At 8 weeks interval, patient was lost to follow-up after 2 loading doses, and then the patient came uh, uh, and then he was advised the third injection at 4-weekly interval. So at this visit, the visual acuity was almost the same. The best corrected visual acuity was 20/60, and in the last visit, the patient had RPE rip, as we can see here. So our observations were that there were complete resolution of the submacular hemorrhage after the first injection of aflibercept. As we can see from this OCT to this, the SMH have almost resolved. There was persistence of PD until late, and RP folds, and ultimately the RP tear with continued intermittent injections was noted in our case. So RP tears naturally occur in approximately 10% of the AMD eyes with PD. Basically the anti-VEGF, intermittent anti-VEGFs, they contract and fibrose the CNVM, which is secondary to the anti-VEGF therapy, and they can also cause vitreomacular traction and also degeneration of the tight junctions of the RP, and they can also cause abrupt intraocular pressure alterations. So all these features can eventually lead to RP rip. So what are the predisposing factors of RP rip in these kind of patients? These patients are they usually have a large PD with a basal diameter and vertical height of more than equal to 600 microns. At some places, it is mentioned that more than 400 to 550 microns. The patient having sub-RPE cleft or a vascularized PD, and smaller CNVM size with high PD size ratio, and contractile folds in the RP contour due to the CNVM adhering to the undersurface of RP can also predispose to RP rip. So what the literature shows that tears are more likely to occur after the first 3 anti-VEGF injections. In our case, the 4th consecutive injection of the aflibercept led to the RP rip. So in the literature, large PD, high PD, height of PD, and sub-RP clefts with jagged CNVM surfaces in fibrovascular PFD, they are more predisposed to RP rips. While in our case, the large and high PED was not there, but in the after the 3rd injection of aflibercept, jagged surface of the CNVM was observed. So the incidence of RP tears in neovascular AMD trials, when they were compared from faricimab with aflibercept with ranibizumab, so the RP tear incidence was higher with faricimab as compared to aflibercept, and it was almost similar between aflibercept and ranibizumab. So this was a last patient I'll be describing. He was a 83-year-old male patient. He had primary open angle glaucoma also on AGM, and he had multiple systemic illnesses. So the patient came in May 2022 with the best corrected visual acuity in right eye was 20/80 parts. And at this visit, the patient was advised Accentrix injection in 2022. So the patient as to our surprise, the size of the CNVM also increased, and the IR spaces also increased after the first injection. And then the patient was taken on aflibercept. So this IRF spaces and the SHREM, it also reduced after the first injection of aflibercept, and the visual acuity improved from 2200 to 2125. And then the patient was lost to follow-up for 1 year. Then the patient came in September 2022 with a best corrected visual acuity of 23/20 and with a recurrence of fluid. And then the patient was advised aflibercept, but the patient refused due to systemic illness. So the patient came in September 2025 with a large submacular bleed and with a drop in vision from 23/20 to 2600. At that visit, the patient was advised 1 injection of aflibercept, and the submacular hemorrhage, it gradually reduced, but the patient refused for further injections. So he was in right eye in March 2026. The submacular hemorrhage, it almost resolved, only little bit was left, and the visual acuity was around 20/500. In the similar patient, his left eye, when we followed in March 2024, the patient had a best corrected visual acuity of 20/50, and there were fluid spaces. So the patient was advised aflibercept injection 3 loading doses. So after the first loading dose, the visual acuity improved from 20/50 to 20/40, and there were slight reduction of the fluid cystic spaces also, and there was a large PED also in this patient. So the patient was advised, the patient was explained the risk of RP rip with further injections. So after the second loading dose of the aflibercept in left eye of this patient, the visual acuity, it gradually dipped down to 20/60, and the fluid increase as the patient was advised to come for monthly follow-ups. But since the patient was he lived in Delhi NCR, and he could not come for regular follow-ups due to his systemic illnesses also and age also. So after the third injection the of aflibercept, the patient came in March 2025. So he was not very regular with his follow-ups. In this visit also, the patient was advised aflibercept in March 2025. After March 2025, the patient came in September 2025 after his injection. So the visual acuity was 20/100, and so at this visit, injection was advised, and in the patient came in after next 1 month. So visual acuity improved to 20/80. So at this visit, the patient was advised brolucizumab injection, and the visual acuity improved to 20/60, and there was resolution of the iris spaces also. And after that, the patient was again advised aflibercept injection, and the patient came in May after February 2026, and with recurrence of the fluid. So and there was visual acuity drop also. So this patient was again advised aflibercept injection, and in presently this patient came few days back only, so with the gradual reduction in the fluid cystic spaces also, and the visual acuity was stable till 20/40. So this patient also maintained around 3 monthly injection free period as compared to the trials. So, at conclusion, aflibercept 2 mg's efficacy and safety profile has been established across the multiple randomized controlled trials, and it is supported by over a decade of real-world PCV monitoring. More than 20,000 patients from more than 20 countries have been treated in real-world studies, and we'll be surprised to know that more than 90 million doses have been sold since the launch, and it is more than 1 decade of the RCTs and the real world trial of has been completed for aflibercept. One more important point with aflibercept is that there is very low risk of post-injection infections, as seen with few other injections. The rate is only 1 in 10,000 units. And the rate of endophthalmitis is very low, that is 0.6 in 10,000 units. And there is the injection is approved in a total of 7 indications globally for BRVO, CRVO, DME, CNVM, neovascular AMD, myopic CNVM, NVG. It has been approved in Japan only, and for ROP, it has been approved in USA, Switzerland, and Japan. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Roheen, for that wonderful talk. You gave us a very good background on the use of aflibercept in PCV and also shared some very interesting cases. And what you highlighted in your cases was that you could extend quite a few of these patients to a 3 monthly or a 12 weekly injection-free interval. So, which is, a big gain for the patient. And you also, we could see the challenges the real life challenges that we face with patients, those long treatment, long intervals in between visits, and the patient was sick with other systemic diseases. So, of course, those are the real challenges that we do face day in and day out. But nonetheless, you also persisted and you managed to give the patient stable vision, especially your case where you had SHREM. SHREM is something that is very challenging to manage. And most often, these patients land up with a bad scarring and fibrosis. And this patient did show resolution of all the fluid and a very stable SHREM and was maintaining a very stable visual acuity. So that was a very heartening response with aflibercept. Dr. Ruheen, my question to you is that in cases of PCV as opposed to neovascular AMD, would you, once you give the loading, do you also follow treat and extend, or do you go with, as I saw you, it's sometimes PRN and sometimes treat and extend for you?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, basically, in the first visit only, we advise the patient for 3 loading doses and then treat and extend. But due to the irregularity in the follow-ups, sometimes it goes to PRN, but mostly we prefer, ma'am, treat and extend.
So treat and extend, would you like to extend, like you've given 3 injections, loading injections, and then you would give another injection at 8 weeks. After that, would you like to extend by 2 weeks or by 4 weeks in a PCV case?
Ma'am, we usually prefer 4 weekly interval of extending the injections because
Okay.
clinically, most of the patients of our OPD, they are doing well with 4 weekly interval. Uh,
Okay. So I think in PCV, a lot of people, and even me, I would initially do a 2 weekly because PCV is a little more aggressive sometimes and more difficult to manage with longer treatment intervals. So as opposed to a neovascular AMD, in a PCV, I would first start with a 2 weekly increase in the intervals. And then, maybe if the patient is dry and stable, then maybe I would maybe switch on later to a 4 weekly extension. Dr. Ruheen, in your practice, do you do ICG for PCV or it's just the OCT that helps you in diagnosing, as all of us now, or do you do a combination of both? How do you diagnose
Ma'am,
PCV in
yes,
your
ma'am.
practice?
Ma'am, initially for the first visit, we do OCT and the ICG also. But in subsequent visits for follow-ups, we do OCT only.
Okay. And any OCT or ICG biomarkers that you would tell you that this patient is going to have a poor response or this would have a good response? Any features that you have noticed in PCV?
Patients presenting with large submacular hemorrhages or a large SREM or the scarring at the subfoveal region, they tend to have poorer visual outcomes with multiple injections also. So it's better to explain them because their expectations will be very high after the injections.
Hmm.
So it's better to tell them that their visual acuity gains will not be so much as compared to the other patients. So basically, SHREM and chronic cystic spaces also, and large fibrovascular PATs also.
And I feel the ones that respond very well to anti-VEGFs are these, patients who have a single thumb-like PED, a single PED that responds beautifully to anti-VEGF injections, as opposed to patients who have like a whole chain of PEDs. So those require multiple and very aggressive treatment. But a single PED that works very well. Also, if you see on ICG the number of polyps that you see, so if there are lesser number of polyps, this patient is going to need lesser injections and will have a better outcomes. And also the size of the polyps. I think all these things I take into
Yes.
consideration while I'm thinking in my mind how this patient is going to go. Dr. Ritika, anything that you'd like to add? Any experience with dealing with PCV? So PCV is, very common in the Asian, Southeast Asian population, and in India, earlier we were not thinking of PCV so much, but now that we know the OCT criteria, we know how to diagnose it by looking at the OCT itself, because ICG is invasive and not available in many centers. So now even the Asia Pacific Society has given us the guidelines, on how to diagnose PCV on OCT itself. So now we know that a large subset of our population, what we thought was just neovascular AMD, would be having polyps. More than 50 to 60% of the patients do have PCV. And PCV is something that requires more aggressive treatment. So, Dr. Ritika, what are your perspectives on treatment of PCV?
Definitely, ma'am. PCV require more aggressive treatment, and I've seen, contrary to CNVM, if we treat more aggressively in PCV, they respond well with it. The ultimate visual acuity, if we compare a classic CNVM to a PCV patient, PCV patients, if treated very aggressively, in the end, they have better visual acuity as
Right.
compared to the CNVM patients. So I'm
Yeah.
definitely very aggressive with the PCV patients. I put them on 2 weekly follow-ups till the disease is stable. And aflibercept is again my go-to molecule for it, because in brolucizumab I'm scared of RP rip because of the rapidly contractile powers of brolucizumab as a molecule. So I definitely go ahead with aflibercept and more proactive and more aggressive treatment PCV
You
patients.
said 2 weekly follow-ups. I thought you meant 2 weekly extensions. Is
Yes,
it?
ma'am.
Or,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, 2 weekly extensions. So, Dr. Ruhin, you also showed that case with the RP rip. I think RP rip is, would you hold your hand if a patient had a large PED? I don't think it would change your management protocols. We would still go ahead and inject the patient. And generally, what I see is that these RP rips are generally extrafoveal. So even if the patient has the RP rip, the vision, it's very, very rarely in so many years. I think I've just seen one patient who had an RP rip through the fovea. So in even the case that you showed, that large PD was totally extrafoveal. So
Yes.
even if the rip happens, it generally doesn't affect the visual acuity. So I
Right.
don't think we should be so much bothered about RP rips. And RP rips are known to occur spontaneously as well. So I don't think that really would change my treatment paradigm, except if the patient had a large PED sitting right at the center of the fovea, then maybe I would tell the patient that the vision could drop. But that's a very, very rare occurrence to happen. Um, Dr. Aditi, anything that you would like to share? Dr. Aditi, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. For us also, we do 2 weekly follow-ups only if it's a 2 weekly treatment. I mean, if it's a
The
PCV
extension
case,
of the treatment, is that what you mean, Doctor?
yes, yes, that's what I,
So you give the first three loading doses at 4 weeks. That is every
yes,
month you give three
yes,
injections. Then if the patient generally if he's dry, then you would give the fourth injection at an interval of 8 weeks, right?
yes,
Then
yes,
you would keep extending every 2 weeks.
two,
So
two
your
weeks, yes,
fifth injection again would be then at 10 weeks and then at 12 weeks and
yes,
then at 14 weeks like that. So in
yes,
this treat and extend, we don't call the patient for a examination visit. So the
yeah,
patient comes for his injection,
for the injection, yes.
for the
But
injection.
actually, very few patients agree to it.
Yeah,
So,
I know in the peripheral, like I said, in India, it is a very challenging protocol to follow. Maybe in the metros where the patients are more mobile, they can come on their own with transport, Uber, and all that. So I think in the metropolitan cities, it is easier to follow as opposed to peripheral areas where it's a big challenge for the patient to come. So yeah, but
I
I
had
think.
a question. Sorry to interrupt, ma'am. I had a question for Dr. Ruheen. In that case where after the three loading doses, you switched to brolucizumab, what was the reason for it? I think that was the second case, right? Where there was a full resolution of the Shrem after you gave brolucizumab.
Yes. In that patient, because of the Shrem only, I advise the patient for blucizumab injection
Okay, okay, that's
because it has a good drying effect of the macula.
Hmm. Yeah,
Just because of
brolucizumab
that.
definitely has a quicker and good drying effect, but the only thing that we fear is the inflammations that happen. And I think we have a
Yes.
question also in our chat box that there's Dr. Vipul Arora who says that he's encountered severe inflammatory side effects in his own practice, which have made him highly cautious. Have you personally managed cases of brolucizumab-induced IOIs or occlusive vasculitis in your patients, and how did you handle it? So if anyone has any experience with brolucizumab-induced vasculitis. No. So yes, it is known, though in the Indian population, these reactions have not been so severe and have generally responded to topical and oral steroids. There have been patients which have been shared in groups which did require a vitrectomy to clear the inflammation, but definitely not as severe as in the European population. But yes, whenever you're giving brolucizumab, that fear is always there at the back of your mind, that this patient could encounter an IOI. I personally have not encountered any. But yes, like Dr. Vipul said, he has. Uh, So, anything else, Dr. Ritika, on the diagnosis of PCV as such? Would you like to highlight that? What are the diagnostic features that you see on the OCT which tells you that this patient has
So,
PCV?
ma'am, with indirect ophthalmoscope or massive submacular hemorrhage with the paucity of drusins, the other eye not having drusins is a telltale sign. With the very first look, you can know. Then coming to the OCT, there are these peaked and peak PEDs, and there are thumb-like multiple PEDs, the height of PEDs. All these are telltale signs.
Do you also do advise an ICG, or you just look at the OCT too?
Unfortunately, ma'am, in my practice, I don't have a ICG. So I do have Octa. So I do Octa for only those patients which I fear that they have PCV.
And in Octa, do you get a good delineation of the PCV? Because
There is
PCV,
flow restriction.
yeah.
Yeah, because
It doesn't show up that well. All PCVs don't, because they are low flow lesions,
yeah,
and they are so deep seated that they may not show up on all the Octa machines very well.
yes,
And
ma'am, the delineation is not very good.
yeah.
But the indirect ophthalmoscope, using indirect ophthalmoscope and OCT, you can pick up 80% of the PCV lesion.
I think the OCT is the go-to now to diagnose PCV. I don't really think a lot of people do ICG unless you want to document the closure of the polyp. So, like you showed in the studies, what is remarkable is that a large subset of patients showed a complete closure of the polyps, that is, totally inactive polyps. And if you really want to document that, then I think an ICG plus an OCT would then tell you that polyp has closed completely. But in any case, we are not looking for polyp closure when we are treating our patients. We are just looking at maintaining a patient who is fluid free, right? So, any other questions? Let me just check. I think we've already overshot the time. So yeah, so all the studies, I think the first the first real study that was done for PCV was with aflibercept, which showed great responses. And for PCV, I think for all of us, aflibercept has been the most trusted molecule, which has shown good results. And the best part is that now we have the confidence from these studies that we can extend the patient to 12 weeks at least, and even 16 weeks in a lot of cases. So I think that was one very wonderfully highlighted by you. And with that, I think we've come to the end of this seminar. We've taken up all the questions in the chat box. And thanks to both the speakers for the wonderful talks and the great cases that you presented. It's been a pleasure to be a part of this webinar, and thanks again to Bayer for this academic activity which involved so many people, and it was great to interact with the audience and get their questions as well. Thank you so much.
So again, on behalf of Bayer, ma'am, I would like to thank both the speakers, Dr. Ritika and Dr. Ruhin, for wonderfully discussing the cases as well as the theory related to the AMD as well as PCV. And as always, ma'am, thank you for wonderfully moderating and bringing out a lot of open-ended questions, which led to wonderful discussion and a lot of learnings for us as well as the audience associated today. So with that, if there are no more questions, then I would like to thank you all, and we can close the session here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
night.
you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good
Thank
night.
you so much, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.